I want to explore the idea of how seeds grow, because I'm going to relate this to the seed sower parable to Isaiah 9, verse 6 and 7. Isaiah 9, 6 and 7 says, verse 6 and 7 says, "For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us, and the government will rest on his shoulders, and his name will be called," his name, think about name as character. His character will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be no end to the increase of his government or of peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this. So, one of the things you see there is kingdom. Kingdom. Well, a kingdom doesn't exist without a king. And a kingdom doesn't exist without some rules. And Yeshua's rules as king are the Torah. Love one another and keep my commandments. Keep my appointed times. That's Torah in a nutshell. Is love Yahweh with all your heart, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Make sure that their livestock aren't lost, or make sure that your livestock don't graze in their fields, that your fields become grazed bare, and that then the animal goes over to the other side of the fence and grazes on someone else's field. Several things like that. Not moving boundary markers, not coveting, not stealing, not murdering, not committing adultery. That's showing love by not doing those things. And even like Christ said, don't do certain things, but he raised the bar, just like he said, anyone who looks at a woman with lust has committed adultery in his heart already with her. That's a raising of the bar, not just the physical act, but you don't even let it get here. You don't even let it get inside. You take the thoughts captive. And like in the tabernacle, especially the tabernacle, the ark, the mercy seat was of pure gold, sitting on a box, a wooden box covered in gold. And the wood, I guess, represents humanity and our human nature, from what I've kind of gathered from all this. Same with the pillars wrapped in gold represent our human nature, but it's imputed righteousness, so to speak, that we can be with the Father. And this mercy seat sits on this box, and as that mercy seat, which is the throne of Yahweh and Yeshua, sits upon our heart, we enthrone him by living his word. His kingdom increases by our obedience to him, because we say he's king, he's Lord. And how does this relate to the seed sower parable? Or the the mustard seed. The mustard seed is small, a tiny little seed, but it grows. It grows into a big tree and starts out, and you have your first leaves that come up while the plant is growing roots, while the tree is growing roots. And then it progresses from there to leaves. So, there has to be a foundation. Just like there's foundations to plants, there has to be a foundation to our temple. And why do we want to live a Torah? Why do we want to live according to the commandments? Because that's how we build this temple, this tabernacle. That's how we seat him on the throne, is by becoming more and more like him. Love for people and representing Yahweh. That's what the Tzitzit are about. That's what the beard is about. That's what about eating clean meats. That's what about the Sabbath is about. Keeping the Sabbath, not profaning the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That's what all that's about. And by doing so, we build this temple, this tabernacle. And when you look at the parable, the leaves, Tzitzit, embracing Tzitzit, and beards, and head covering, and modesty, and all these things that are embraced as a lifestyle, they're part of the leaves, so to speak, that are the precursor to the fruit. Because as you look set apart, as you seek to live set apart, it separates your mind, your frontal lobe, it separates that from the world. That's what Torah is all about, is being separate from the world. What was the tabernacle? The tabernacle was separate from the world outside. And there was only one way into that tabernacle. One way in. And we pass from death to life. We pass from the outer court to the inner court. And that's how we're transformed. That's how we become transformed. We start with the outer court as, seedling, and we're seedling, and the kingdom grows in us. The word of Yahweh grows in us as we seek to obey, and as we take the nourishment of the word. As we get nourishment from this word and we seek to apply it. We take the nutrition, so to speak, from the roots, which goes into the leaves, and as that happens, the leaves grow bigger. That nutrition and the photosynthesis, and they're reliant on the sun. So are we reliant on the sun, but not S-U-N, but S-O-N. That we will shine forth at some point, eventually, like S-U-N. That glory that Yahweh has, and as he glorified Yeshua, like he said, glorify me. I have glorified you, not glorify me. We glorify God by living according to his set-apart word. By learning where we are in history. That's what the prophets are about. We learn about where we are in history. And I can tell you personally, I've grown more in the last few years, the last 6 years, 7 years, embracing the Hebraic side of things as I ever did even though I grew up with the Sabbath, the holy days, and the clean meats, and yes, clean foods, that was a foundation, that was the roots But now I'm growing more leaves. I'm growing more leaves and growing more fruit, not getting in arguments with people. I've grown enough to where I've realized I don't have to. I'm not sitting there going to say every man must have a beard or everyone must do a head covering or have modesty. Those are things you have to be convicted of yourself. Or prepping for Shabbat. Prepping for Shabbat helps you get in the mindset of worship. For the holy days, cleaning out the leaven out of your house, which is probably where the whole thing of spring cleaning came from. But cleaning out that house, and that's a physical thing, but there's a spiritual reality behind that. There's a lot of things in the physical world that model spiritual realities. Loving one another. Well, what do? In some ways, maybe if we're a plant and someone else is a plant, we pollinate them in order for them to... Pollination has to take place before fruit can be done, before seeds can be formed. Pollination is a must. Pollination is where you get that's where the ability to become a seed to grow fruit comes from. It has to be every tree, every fruit tree, or tomato plant or lettuce or broccoli or anything else, corn, all that stuff, it has to be pollinated first. And in some ways, maybe that's what we do. That's a physical symbol of a spiritual... Maybe, some water the seed that is in someone, the seed being the Word of God, as you read the parable of the seed sower. Because it talks about, what the different things of where things go. Here, verse 18 in Matthew 13, it says, "Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart." And then, you read further down, here's the word, verse 20, about the rocky place. Here's the word and immediately receives it with joy, yet has no firm root in himself, but is only temporary. And when affliction and persecution arises because of the word, immediately he falls away. That's the way a lot of people are. What happens with lettuce? When it gets too hot, what happens to lettuce? And several other things. When it gets hot, they do what is called bolting, where it goes to seed. It stops producing the leaves that we eat, and it bolts into seed. Although that doesn't... But here's the word in the worries of the world. When we're not reading when we're not foundation in this word, this is like the firm soil. When we're not in the word and in the firm soil, which you would relate to firm soil, we're not going to grow. When we're in good soil, that's where we bear fruit. That's when we have roots. That's where we deal with tribulation and struggles, the heat of all that stuff. And that's where we bear fruit. That's when we bear fruit. So, let's continue to grow.